Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Careers in Environmental Education panel. My name is Brendon Barclay, and I serve as the Manager of Education and Engagement with the South Central region at the National Wildlife Federation. In 2002, I began a partnership with the National Wildlife Federation. I had just adopted an urban forest. Who knew you could literally adopt a forest and hug the trees? But all jest aside, one of the ways that we saved this urban forest was by stretching an inch measure tape around the trees to measure their diameter. You put those inches into that pi equation. And for many of us, the first time in our lives in the real world, we actually used pi to get the diameter of those trees. Then we took that data to assess how much air those trees filter, how much water they filter, and compared to having to pay for them doing that work, we assessed a dollar value to it. And by doing a sample census, we just make more efficacy for preserving urban green space. So it was a lot of fun, and it was an opportunity to really get actively engaged in the community, helping to preserve this urban green space. And that's where I met the National Wildlife Federation. That year, I began as a contractor and a team building facilitator with the program's Earth Tomorrow Summer Institute. And the Summer Institute is committed to developing the skills of students in environmental stewardship and responsibility that they continue throughout the school year. My career path, as many, has followed a very circuitous route. That means every which way but straight. It's gone all over the place. And one of the cool things that I had an opportunity to do was to, for a number of years, for 3 years, in the DeKalb County school system. So I got a chance to teach every grade from kindergarten to college, which was outside of the school county system. That was actually at Spelman College. But along that path, one of the things that really inspired me was this opportunity that I had to show the work that we were doing in the community to a national audience. The Oprah Winfrey Network and P&G Future Friendly Initiative campaign partnered to highlight community participants and ways that they were engaging their community. So that same experience that I just explained a moment ago in adopting urban forests, they selected us out of hundreds of, or probably thousands of people that applied to be highlighted, and we got a chance to show the nation how to plug in and be a part of sustainability in their communities. Well, 12 months ago, I kind of nailed that path a little firmer on a straight line and joined the National Wildlife Federation as the Manager of Education and Engagement. And I work in the capacity now to continue the work of our Summer Institute through the Environmental Education Program, Earth Tomorrow, and throughout the year through EcoSchools programming. And I don't know why I'm quiet. I turned up all the way, so hopefully whatever is causing me to be a little, let me try this one over here, help you hear me a little better. Okay. All right. So right now, what we will do in this panel, we are featuring three speakers who are each educators, but who have very different careers and career paths. We will begin by introducing the speakers and asking each of them to share a bit of their career paths, how they got where they are now, and to give their advice to students. I'll start with Donna. Donna Volkmann is committed to providing action-oriented education and stewardship opportunities to all students. Donna is the Fairfax County Public Schools Education Specialist for the Get to Green Environmental Stewardship Program. She received her Bachelor's of Science degree in biology and her master's degree in curriculum and instruction in secondary science education from Virginia Tech. Donna has over a decade of experience teaching AP Environmental Science and biology, has presented at the International Teacher Scientist Partnership Conference, and was honored as Einstein Distinguished Education or Educator Fellow at the U.S. Department of Energy. Donna has been an important contributor to the Joint Environmental Task Force, a collaborative effort between the Fairfax County government and Fairfax County Public Schools to develop environmental sustainability goals. Donna's current work focuses on nurturing relationships with sustainability partners, providing professional development to support teachers and engaging all students in outdoor learning opportunities, expanding the Get to Green program to provide access to all students, and and guiding school principals to be leaders of green schools. Donna, please tell us more about how your career path and your advice to young people who are interested in pursuing a career in education.
Thank you, Brendon. Thank you so much for including me on this panel. I truly have missed the opportunity to easily engage with students during the pandemic, so I'm thrilled to join you today. My pathway, like yours, Brendon, to environmental education is probably not the standard journey, mostly due to the fact that when I hit forks in the road, I often take the road less traveled. So my passion has always been life sciences, and I loved my high school biology teacher, so I started on that trailhead, and I majored in biology, used my elective courses to get my teaching license. Back then, environmental science wasn't a major, so when I went to school, but I never stopped asking questions, and to this day try to learn all about the world around me and really my connections to the earth. My life went along many bumpy trails, learning much along the way when I secured my dream job of teaching biology at my high school alma mater when I was over 40 years old, and I got that job while waiting in line at a Michael's craft store. I ran into the principal there, who I had attended high school with. I boldly reintroduced myself and told him I might be looking for a biology teaching position. 2 days later, he called me saying the teacher had left over winter break, and could I come in the next day? So I sometimes wonder where my path would have led had I not had the courage to start that conversation with him. Then I entered a career of what I conceptualize as being a nonstop learner. Being out of the workforce for many years, I wanted to be current in my craft, so I went to obtain my master's degree in curriculum instruction in a program that was led by this engaging, hands-on professor. And this is where my passion for environmental education really was fed. We made biodiesel fuel, we went geocaching, we collected macroinvertebrates, and explored the local forests, all as part of our coursework. So when the opportunity to teach AP Environmental Science came up at my school, I said yes, and used many of the skills that I learned in that course and lots of hours teaching myself, but hoping to empower students to understand the importance of connecting to the environment in a meaningful and engaging way. Thankfully, along the way, I had colleagues who were amazing support and mentors to me to encourage me in my teaching. And then I pursued my current position because I believed that the opportunities I gave my students in the classroom should be available to all students. Indeed, my students often were so inspired and awed by what they were learning in our classroom and outside of our classroom that they all wanted to know why environmental education is not a standard in school. Why do they have to take finance, but they don't have to learn about the environment? So that really motivated me to move on to this position of educational specialist with our Get to Green program, because I aspire to work to impact all students pre-K to 12. Which is over 180,000 students in our school district. I want to tell you a little bit about Get to Green. It's an environmental stewardship program that we have, and our mission is to promote student learning and action using the environment as a foundation. And the experiences with my students are now ones that I can offer to all students across the county, making artificial oyster reefs, growing and planting grasses for the Chesapeake Bay. We only have 2 full-time staff positions right now. And so excitingly, the school board now is seeking our input on how to expand the program for students to provide equitable opportunities for students across ages and at all schools to engage in environmental stewardship. So this means right now I'm working on staffing and professional development and funding for projects at schools and building that infrastructure. So I would say my experiences have led me to this most challenging and most meaningful trailhead so far. I really think I have the best job. I basically support schools, so I don't make them do anything. I really can just offer my support. And I would say that my career has evolved by accepting challenging opportunities and growing confidence as I gained those experiences. Collaborating with National Wildlife Federation, we use the Eco Schools Pathways as one of our frameworks for our school work. Stormwater and wastewater management folks, Chesapeake Bay Foundation. And what I really discovered was all of these avenues that I just mentioned, they all have educational outreach opportunities, which I never knew. So although traditionally teaching in a classroom is one course, and we certainly need engaging teachers, there's lots of different environmental opportunities for you in the education field. So my advice to you, find learning experience that best fit you. There's incredible programs like the one that I was in where you could work and go to school at the same time and always be a learner. Second, a classroom teacher is an option, but we need passionate, engaging teachers everywhere, and look outside of your traditional avenues. And I think we're going to learn from some other folks here today too. We need experts for environmental education, for farm to cafeteria, designing outdoor spaces, curriculum experts, to work on all of those pathways for eco schools. And zero waste is a big thing that we're working on right now too. When an opportunity presents itself, say, why not? My most rewarding and most challenging accomplishments began with me thinking, there is no way I can do that. And then I asked, well, what's the worst that can happen? So sometimes the worst happened, but they were the most meaningful experiences for both my students and myself. And lastly, it's okay not to know what your next step is going to be. Your path is going to curve and wind in ways you never would have had any control over or thought about. But don't ever underestimate the power of that hello and looking someone in the eye and making that awkward introduction, because it might lead you somewhere. And finally, your next interviewer is not going to ask you what you did. Your resume can say what you did. They want to know what experiences made you grow and how you grew and what experience you bring to the table. So take the time to explore that path less traveled, be open-minded, and as my husband always says, always leave the places you go better than you found them. So thanks for sharing, and I'm happy to connect with anyone afterwards too. Thanks.
Thank you, Donna. Next, we'll hear from one of my colleagues, Oday Salim. Oday is an attorney with the National Wildlife Federation's Great Lake Regional Center, and he is also the director of the Environmental Law and Sustainability Clinic at the University of Michigan Law School. Oday has practiced environmental law in Pennsylvania and Michigan, focusing on stormwater management, water quality permitting, water rights, environmental justice, land use and zoning, utility regulation, mineral rights, and renewable energy. He is litigated in administrative and civil courts at the local, state, and federal levels. As an adjunct professor, he's taught energy law at the University of Pittsburgh School of Law and Wayne State University Law School, and oil and gas law at Lewis and Clark Law School. He currently teaches the environmental justice course at Michigan Law School. Oday also gives talks on various subjects, including green infrastructure in urban areas, water affordability, and rate making, and conferring rights to natural resources. Oday, thank you for joining us today. Please describe your career path, and did you foresee yourself wearing so many hats in this profession?
Thank you for that kind introduction, Brendon. It's great to be with everyone. I started out actually doing the humanities. I was a graduate student doing history and philosophy, and I made my move to law school a little bit later in my late 20s. Once I was in law school, I knew right away that I wanted to teach. I was teaching as a graduate student in history and philosophy, so I still had that experience of getting up in front of a classroom and covering a topic. But I knew in law school that I wanted to teach because, and this is the case throughout my life, but particularly in law school, I met so many inspiring law professors who mentored me, spent a lot of time with me, invested a lot in me, and were fantastic at their trade. And I knew I wanted to do something like that, but what I thought to myself was, I'm going to go practice law for 5, 10, maybe 15 years, and I'll slowly work my way into some kind of academic position, part-time or full-time. But I really thought that I needed to go out there and practice for a while first. And that's what I tried to do. I interviewed with a number of law firms, and I actually had a spot secured for me at a California law firm in Los Angeles, and was ready to go. And at the very last minute, one of my mentors at Lewis and Clark Law School, a fantastic teacher, came and found me in the school and brought me into his office and said, the deadline for this position is tomorrow, and you've got to apply. And that position ended up becoming my first position, which was a teaching position. It was a position as a clinical professor at the University of Pittsburgh Law School, where I was able to do work in an environmental clinic. And so I'm very thankful to him for putting me on that path. And what I really love about clinical law is that my students learn by doing. The entire point of a law clinic is for students to represent real clients on real cases and to do real legal work. They do it under my supervision, but it's a lovely way for me to teach because I'm definitely teaching my students, but I'm also constantly working alongside my students. And, they really are the managers of their own cases. I'm there for supervision and oversight. And it's a great relationship. I really enjoy doing that kind of teaching. I'm lucky that I get to, my students, for the most part, work on National Wildlife Federation cases. They represent the National Wildlife Federation. They advance a lot of the issues that Donna mentioned. My students work on the legal aspects of, a lot of those issues for the Federation. It's an incredibly rewarding position. There are lots of different learn by doing positions, particularly as you get into college and graduate school. Of course, those things are there in middle school and high school, maybe even earlier. But certainly once you get to college and graduate school, students have amassed enough knowledge that they can really be thrown into, a situation and asked to have real world interactions in order to practice the skills that they've been learning in the classroom. And I think of my job mainly as managing talent. My students come into my clinic incredibly talented, incredibly skilled, with a lot of knowledge in a lot of different areas of environmental law and science and engineering and policy. And my job really is to stay out of their way for the most part, but find opportunities to intervene in their work in order to make sure that they're taking away lessons and that they're learning by doing, but also learning while doing. And it's a lucky place to be in a law clinic because you essentially work on really complex, high stakes cases, but you're able to do so a little bit more slowly than your typical, attorney would, so that you can learn along the way. That's what I do today. And as I mentioned, I really have mainly, my professors and other education mentors to thank for putting me in this direction.
Thank you. Finally, we will hear from Jillian Morris. Born and raised in Maine, Jillian Morris' love for the ocean started at an early age and has continued to play an integral role into her adult life. She has spent hours, thousands of hours, in the field working and diving with sharks across the globe. She is a marine biologist, shark conservationist, scuba instructor, educator, and founder of Sharks for Kids. She has filmed for numerous television shows and networks and has appeared on Shark Week and is an ambassador diver for the Professional Association of Diving Instructors. She was named Scuba Diving Magazine's July 2016 Sea Hero, awarded the inaugural SharkCon Shark Hero Award in 2017, and was the Go Blue Awards 2020 Blue Ambassador of the Year. She is the author of Norman, the Nurse Shark, and Shark Superpowers, and a member of the prestigious Ocean Artists Society. Jillian, thank you for joining us today. And as a member of the environmental education community, tell us your career path and any advice you have for folks who may be interested in following a similar path.
Oh, well, thank you so much for the introduction and for having me. Yeah, my path, I think, like the other panelists, has been very, very different. If you had asked me 15 years ago if I would be a teacher or teaching, I would have thought you were crazy. I would have said, absolutely not. I'm a scientist and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to continue to research sharks. And so, yeah, so my path is definitely very different to get to this place where now I don't teach in a traditional manner. I'm not in a school. I visit schools. I live in the Bahamas, and so I do visit the schools here, but very non-traditional. Yeah, I started out exploring the ocean, growing up with family who loved the ocean and spent a lot of time crawling through tide pools as a kid and at the coast of Maine. And really just developed a love there, and told my parents I wanted to be a marine biologist when I was 5. And I think they probably thought that it was a phase and it would go away, and it didn't. And I saw my first shark when I was snorkeling when I was 8 years old in Florida with my dad's work. We traveled. And so it just really inspired something. And so I knew I wanted to learn more. And the older I got and the more opportunities I had, I started to pursue research and wanted to learn more about sharks. And my experiences, as for many people, people are terrified of sharks, but I was swimming with them, working with them, and my family and friends were thinking I was crazy and asking me why I was doing this. And I was traveling the world by myself as a female as well to work on projects, and heard a lot of no's, heard a lot of, this isn't a job for women. This isn't a job, the science, the diving, working with sharks, and I started filming as well. So all careers that are predominantly still fairly male, and so was told a lot of no's and a lot of why are you doing this? And so I think, and I'll talk a little bit at the end about my advice for certain things. And then so I was traveling, I had cameras, I was doing a lot of photo and video work, went to Australia to look at a possible PhD project and realized that I didn't want to go that route. I wanted to teach people. I wanted to share my experiences with people. And I was taking photos and videos of my research home and sharing it with people. And they were getting excited about the ocean and sharks. So something really clicked right there, that my first experience really educating was showing my photos and videos and talking about it, and started visiting schools. I have friends that are teachers. My mom's a teacher. And so visited schools and talked about it, and really felt this connection and really felt inspired talking to kids and getting them excited about the oceans and sharks. And so kind of thought, isn't that interesting? You know, how do I translate this science, this research? How am I sharing it with other people? And I'm using photo and video to do that, to talk about why we're tagging sharks, how we're doing it, and thought, wouldn't it be cool if we could combine that and create something for kids and resources? Because oftentimes when I was asked to speak at schools, there were not resources to go with it. There weren't activities or a lesson plan or things like that. So teachers and that content to create stuff. So I thought, wouldn't that be really cool? And sat on that idea for a long time, continued to work in the research field and diving and media, and then turned 30 and went, this is what I think I want to stop talking about it. And I think I actually want to do this. I haven't found a job that fits what I'm looking for. I haven't found really a space that really fills my soul with what I want to be doing, what I'm passionate about. So I'm going to create my own. And so I did. I created Sharks for Kids and decided that I want to bring resources to students all over the world. I want them excited about sharks in the oceans and change that conversation from fear to fascination. So how do I do that? Learned a lot developing curriculum. I don't have a background in that, so had to take classes and really try to educate myself. I think, you know, one of the panelists said that being a lifelong learner, absolutely, really, really important, because I'm still taking classes. I'm not a business person, but I've had to become one because I do run a business. And so educating myself on how do you create curriculum? What are the standards? What do teachers want in the US? But I also do a ton of work in the Bahamas. So I have to compare and look, and so have learned a lot about and have a huge respect for educators and the amount of work they do with in classroom educators and curriculum development. It's not easy. It's fascinating to me. So learning that process, and Sharks for Kids was born in 2012. And then we spent a year, 3 scientists and a business director, trying to figure out how to make a business and how to do this and become educators. We were all in the classrooms. And so it took us a year to get all our content and get it to a place where we felt it was good and ready to launch. And it started as a passion project. I want to teach kids about sharks. I want to teach them about the ocean. I want to share my experiences, and I want to inspire other people to love the ocean. And full-time career. I'm running it full-time. I teach all over the world virtually, mostly virtually recently, as I think everybody when the world, but we always did virtual. So we were a Skype partner right from the beginning. And I think we've traveled over 1 million miles on Skype as an organization. And so it was always teaching, and just really have found that path of diving, science, media, I didn't follow the step one, step two, a straight line. My line was very wiggly and all over the place. And I said yes to opportunities. I didn't listen to people who told me no. And I found mentors. I found strong women in the fields that I was interested in, and I reached out to them. And people like Dr. Sylvia Earle, who I've now have worked with and was able to give her a copy of my first book. And so I think it's been very, like I said, wiggly, and I was able to combine all the things that I cared about. And I do not do science full time. I don't teach full time. But I get to do all of it on different days. And like the photo video work we use for our resources, and get to do a lot of that. And I spend a lot of time with sharks. I'm in the water a lot. I'm taking kids out to see these animals. So yeah, so it's been an extremely non-traditional path. But I think to kind of finish that up, my advice is that if you don't see necessarily a career or a job that fits exactly what you want, don't be afraid to try something, to create that space that you want to be in. And also, you know, people are always going to tell you no, depending on, it doesn't matter what career. There's always going to be somebody who says you can't do it. You're not smart enough. You don't have enough money, or you don't live in the right spot, or you're, this is a job for somebody else. And it's, I think, really important to ignore that and to actually just follow your path and follow your passion, find good mentors, and just, you can create that space. It doesn't, just because it doesn't exist doesn't mean you can't create it. So, and yeah, be creative with how you go about doing that. So just, and even if you're later in life doing it or starting, I mean, I didn't start this right fresh out of university, and now, and has, so kind of, it wasn't, and again, it wasn't something that I had imagined I would be doing. And now I can't imagine not doing this. So.
Thank you, Jillian. I definitely resonate with you. Can you all hear me? I don't see the little yellow box around my voice. You can't hear me? No, can't hear me? Yes, okay. Resonate with what you just said as far as creating that path for yourself and opening doors through opportunities. I mentioned just taking that opportunity to adopt the force. I never imagined that it would yield such great dividends as being able to work with the National Wildlife Federation as it does today. Thank each of you, Donna, Oday, as well, for sharing on our panel. Now we get to the fun part, the Q&A. So I will dive in and ask you all some of these questions that have been listed here. Oday and Jillian, you both mentioned having professional mentors. How do you recommend finding a mentor, and how have you found advice or feedback on advancing your own career? And
I can start briefly. I think, I know it's tough, but to the extent possible, to find mentors, be a mentor, be open, to, working with folks, and teaching them what you already know, because at any age, we can always mentor, folks who are younger than us. But I think in order to find a mentor, it really just starts with asking finding time to ask someone questions, outside of the classroom environment. And for some people, that's really easy. To be honest, for me, that was always really easy. I could just walk into a teacher's, office and just start asking some questions and form a relationship with them. But I know for my own students, for some of them, that's not easy. It's a big ask. But what I would say is this: I'm sure there are a few, teachers out there, a very small, handful who, won't be as receptive, but the vast majority of teachers at all levels are eager to be mentors, are eager to meet with people outside of the classroom and to take on their, questions about professional development and course planning and et cetera. So I think it just starts with walking into someone's office and asking them that first question, and then finding time, to do that a few times in the semester, and you will find out pretty soon, who you're clicking with and who's giving you the kind of advice that's working for you.
thank you. What about you, Jillian? You're still on mute. We've all done it. No
Sorry,
problem.
I didn't actually hear the question. I had to jump off. I have my 20-month-old daughter here running around, and she had the TV remote and the batteries came out. So just
No
had to,
worries.
yeah.
The question was about finding a mentor. I'm actually going to jump to Donna because you mentioned that principal opening a door for you to start your career. So a mentor of sorts. How have your experiences with mentors been, and what advice would you give?
I think what Oday said is like having the courage to just talk to people, introduce yourself. When I did the fellowship with the Department of Energy, that was kind of hard for me. And you just had to walk right up to high officials and people that were running the national labs, and I'd ask them about their work. And that people, one thing people, I think I didn't realize, people are very excited to talk about their work. So when you ask the question of what they're doing and how they got there, people want to share that story. So I think just overcoming maybe that initial fear of thinking that you shouldn't approach somebody, go for it. Ask them the questions, ask how they got there. You might not be able to have that same path because like all of us have talked about, we just kind of wound and got our way there. But you never know when that person who you do chat with might have advice for you or give you a program to follow, and you start in that direction.
Thank you. Jillian, what about you?
Yeah, so I think the same, like, ask, do not be afraid to ask. And I think there's something to be said as well. If you can't do it in person, a well-written email. I know we live in the world of social media now, but actually taking the time to draft a nice email, a thoughtful, and reach out to people or ask for the best way to contact them. And I now get to mentor some younger marine scientists and also people that are looking to do environmental education or non-traditional. And it's really rewarding. I think it's amazing. I'm so thankful for the women and the men, but you know, some of the women that really inspired me, that didn't say no, didn't turn me down, that responded to an email or a phone call, and really helped me not be afraid to ask and not be afraid to kind of shape my own path and be strong and confident in going after what I wanted. And so, yeah, so I think don't be afraid to ask. It's always going to be a no if you don't ask. So approach somebody and you might make a really incredible connection that you had no idea about. And then also, yeah, if you get to that position where you can then in turn mentor, I think that's really special. And to remember that and to be open to that, how important it was for you when you were in that place. So if you can offer that to somebody else, to be open with that.
And I remember you mentioning your book, and I learned some years ago the value of taking a person's book as a mentoring opportunity. There are things that people will tell you, secrets, and hours upon hours on end they will spend with you in the book that they took so much time to invest their heart and soul in. So not to take for granted our book mentors as well. I'll just add those 2 cents. Thanks, everybody. Reflecting back on your decision to pursue education as a part of your professional life, what skills did you consider most important then? And do you feel the same way now? Or are there important skills that you were unaware of at the time? Anybody can jump in.
I would say, I mean, I think I've talked a lot about skills and things that you need, but I think connecting with professional organizations is really helpful. The North American Association of Environmental Educators has so many conferences and programs. And when I first attended conferences, I feel like that's where you start seeing these experiences like Jillian offers that are not in the classroom. And I just had no idea that these even existed until I really attended some of these conferences to find out more. So I think that always seeking and joining those professional, I mean, they have student prices for you to join, and just even the webinars that are online now that you could just kind of dip your toes in so that you can see if it's something you'd be interested in. That really didn't answer your question, but that's what I was thinking of when you said that.
No, that was good. Good.
I'll just say one thing that I wish I would have learned a long time ago. I've been teaching it to myself since, is, for lack of a better way to put it, like every teacher, I think, would find it useful to have a certain amount of graphic art skills, not to necessarily create art ourselves, but to visually represent concepts and topics for students. I think that that's something that to have a facility with graphic design, doing a nice slide deck, representing a concept in a few different ways with diagrams and flow charts, particularly if you're going to be teaching in the environmental, science and policy field. I think having some kind of skill set, some amount of facility with graphic representation of otherwise written concepts, I think is a good idea. And you could start that really early, by taking some basic, drawing and art classes in middle school and high school, and you can get more serious about it in college or just online, online with private institutions, and take some classes on, PowerPoint design, Microsoft Word graphic design, Corel Draw, Corel Art, all kinds of programs that are available to folks. So I wish I had been done more of that as a younger person. I'm playing a lot of catch up now.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with the graphic stuff. I'm from photography, worked a lot with Photoshop. And so I think sometimes, and that's just being open to skills. I think sometimes in the world of, and maybe it is, I didn't do the traditional education route, but I know in science it's very focused on these are the only things I need, and I'm gonna narrow my vision on that. And you don't realize that communication skills, or graphic design, we do it all the time, video editing, photo editing, other skills that you might not have realized, and being open to that and open to learning those skills and open to adjusting and kind of pivoting. We've all had to do that with, how our teaching styles in the last couple of years. So really being flexible and open to learning those new skills, because, or being open to an opportunity that might not have been exactly what you thought, but you can actually take a lot from it, and it will lead you to the next step for something that was more on the path or the goal. And so just, being open to opportunities and new skills is really, really valuable.
And I like that last thing you mentioned, being open to the opportunity that is not exactly what you thought. I've been listening to this audiobook, Think Differently, and it emphasized just how important it is to constantly take in information and reassess your own premise by what's available now and ways that you may evolve. Another question here, each of you have created and led your own organizations or initiatives. How do you develop your leadership capacity or capabilities to be able to step into those roles? How did you develop? And I will start with you, Jillian, with the Sharks for Kids, which is just totally cool concept for me. If you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so I think, like I said, I never envisioned starting my own business, but it really came back to wanting to combine things. For me, it was, I think, I want to be able to do these things that I love, and I don't want to do the one specific. And I looked for jobs. I looked for, and I remember even looking for master's programs to align specifically with what I was trying to do, versus the science route. And I think for me, it was just taking that risk. It was hard. It was hard to kind of step out and do that. But I think really not being afraid to say, okay, these are my skill sets. This is what I want to accomplish. This is what I want to be doing. And so I'm gonna create that. And then the learning curve is steep. It's very steep. Again, I'm not a business person. I had no business background. Very, very science minded. And so learning all that and the education stuff. So it's been challenging. I mean, it's been extremely rewarding, but I think is just be prepared to face those challenges that might not be the normal challenges or traditional challenges of, okay, well, I have to take these classes and get these grades, and then I have to apply for this position. Because yes, all of that applies, but then you've added all these other things into the mix when you become your own boss. So all the amazing things that you get to create, then also you take on board a lot more because you are your own boss. It's rewarding, it's challenging. I learn new stuff, not even just about sharks, but I learn new stuff every day about running a business and working with people and how to manage people and manage volunteers. And so, yeah, I think it's just be aware of the risks and the challenges when you go into it, but be okay with that. You're going to be okay. You can do it, but just, I think, be aware that the non-traditional route to running your own business as well is there's a lot of challenges, but it's very doable and it's worth it.
One last question. What would be your top piece of advice for graduating seniors about to embark on their professional careers? Donna or Oday, if you could weigh in on that one.
I guess I would just say be brave and try things, and you're gonna fail at some things, and you're gonna think you loved one thing and you might not, but you're still gonna learn some kind of skill, whether it's how to get along with different people, or you might discover an avenue that you didn't know you were interested in. I think being young, you often think this is what I want to do. I always said I wanted to be a high school biology teacher. And here I am doing, many people take jobs in central office because they want to work their way up. I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing because it's what I'm interested in, and it's now become my passion. So I would just say, take risks. Some things are going to work and some things aren't. I taught my first year out of college for 1 year, and I didn't go back into education for 20 years because it wasn't a great experience for me, but I learned things along the way. And I just think there's so much hope in the students that are going into that are graduating, and we just environmental education is so important, and you're innovative, and I see a lot of hope in the future.
I'll just add briefly, service. Get involved in service. Find a local nonprofit that's doing a stream cleanup. Find your church, temple, synagogue, mosque, and volunteer your time through them, whether it's natural resources related or not. I think seniors especially have already to some extent formed their personalities, but they're just beginning to form their professional personalities and their professional attitudes. And I think that all of us are better off as we're doing whatever we do in remembering that we are privileged to be able to do it, and that we have the knowledge and abilities that we can share with others to make their lives easier. And I think to some extent, education itself, is a kind of, everyday, service. So I would say, this is the time in your life, if you haven't already, to really engage with your community or some other faraway community, and give of yourself.
And I definitely echo that as well as we come up on the time limit for our session. But that service opportunity, that AmeriCorps program, is what led me to participate with that urban forest many years before I ever adopted it, and it's yielded to all this. So I definitely echo that. Well, we have come up to the end of our session. Thank you, each of you, again, for participating with us. And at this time, we have a 30-minute break. I encourage all of those who are listening and participating to check out the colleges, universities, and organizations in our expo hall. And thanks again, and the best to each of you in your career endeavors. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.